is history, being repeated. The whole world lies under the control of the evil one. Anyone not written in the book of life will worship the beast.
All the witches, Sunday worship is the greatest witchcraft of the church. Never was it started by God. Read your Bible. Never. The church, when it was born, did not meet on Sunday. I know I'm getting into your nerves because you like to come to church on Sunday. I'm going to help you or discourage you. If you are discourageable, you will be discouraged because you are going nowhere. But if you are going somewhere, you will be. Something will jump in the inside of you and say, I'm living wrong. And I'm not going to live like this anymore. Sunday worship was an intention of the devil to weaken the church. Nobody is saying that. And I'm not suggesting. I'm telling you, this is the truth. It's revelation. 6 days. How many days? 6 days they woke up early in the morning and they went round the wall. They didn't go around the wall on Sunday. How many days? Then on the seventh day, which is not Sunday, the seventh day is Saturday. It's not Sunday. So, if you want to worship on a day, that right day to worship is Saturday. So you are all out of doctrine, Sunday worshipers.
Did you know that the Pope and his church admitted that they're the ones that changed the Sabbath day from Saturday to Sunday? In a publication called Rome's Challenge, the Pope said, "The Bible teaches that Saturday is God's true Sabbath day, but we change it to Sunday. Sunday," he said, "is our mark of authority. And that authority gives us the right to change even one of God's 10 commandment laws."
Big church, listen to this. These are the unadulterated statements from popes and other Roman Catholic leaders.
Question: which is the Sabbath day? Answer: Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question: why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea, AD 336, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Peter Geierman, The Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, 2nd edition, 1910, page 50. Question: have you any other way of proving that the Church has power to institute festivals of precept? Answer: had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority.
By the moon, okay? When our Creator created this world, He created the moon for us to use the moon as our calendar. So if you read Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, Psalm 104 verse 19, Ezekiel chapter 46 verse 1 to 3, even in Isaiah chapter 66 verse 22 and verse 23, you will see that our Heavenly Father says that in the future, that everyone must keep the Sabbath day and they must keep the new moon day. He said that from one new moon to another and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come and worship Him. So, but if you look at the calendar we're using today, there is no new moon day. we're commanded in Ezekiel chapter 46, verse 1 to 3, that the Sabbath the temple should be open on the Sabbath day and on the new moon day, and that we must worship on the Sabbath day and on the new moon day. But today, we're no longer worshiping on a new moon day because we are using a man-made calendar. The calendar we're using today is a man-made calendar. It was made in AD 1582 AD, about 400 and something years ago. It was made by a Roman Catholic Pope by the name of Pope Gregory. The man that made the calendar we're using today is Pope Gregory in AD 1582 AD. So before then, the whole world was using the moon as their calendar. If you really study about calendar, you will see that the moon used to regulate the month. So when our Heavenly Father told us to keep the Sabbath on the seventh day, he wasn't talking about the seventh day of a man-made calendar. If you read in 1 Samuel chapter 20, you will see that the Israelites was using the moon as their calendar. I highly recommend you read the whole chapter. 1 Samuel chapter 20, you read the whole chapter, you will see that the ancient Israelites, they were using the moon as their calendar. If you read in Colossians chapter 2, from verse 1 to verse 16, you will see that the early followers of Christ was also using the moon as their calendar. So if you read in verse 8, Colossians chapter 2, verse 8, all the way down to verse 16, you will see that Paul was encouraging the early followers of Christ. He was encouraging them not to let anybody condemn them or judge them by them keeping the new moon day or the Sabbath day or the feast day. Today, people are using that chapter or that verse, Colossians 2:16. People are using it to say, hey, look, it says that don't let anybody judge you. Yes, it's saying don't let anybody judge you for keeping those days, for keeping the Sabbath day, for keeping the new moon day, and all the other feasts. So you have to read from verse 1. Colossians chapter 2 from verse 1 to verse 16. But pay attention to verse 8, because verse 8 makes it very clear that he was warning them not to let anybody condemn them from for keeping those days, like the new moon day. Today, we are no longer keeping a new moon day because we're using a man-made calendar. But our Creator created the moon for us to use the moon as our calendar.
From noon to noon and Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says the Almighty. From noon to noon and Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says the Almighty. Isaiah 66, verse 23. Verse 23. Oh, from noon to noon and Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says the Almighty. Isaiah 66, verse 23. Verse 23. Oh, Sabbath's for you and for me. All flesh, in fact.
The story of early Christianity is a story of struggle, persecution, and martyrdom, often at the hands of the ruling government. Yet less than 300 years after the founding of the Church, Emperor Constantine adopted Christianity as the official religion of the most powerful empire the world had ever known. Who was Constantine, and why did he claim to be a Christian? At the dawn of the 4th century, Constantine began his ascent in both power and prestige. He was proclaimed emperor in AD 306, and by AD 324 he had solidified control over the entire Roman Empire. And in the following year he called the First Council of Nicaea. This council formally established a number of doctrinal changes that had been adopted in practice over the previous 2 centuries. The nature of God and the celebration of Easter were 2 key items on the agenda. It was Constantine's prior signing of the Edict of Milan that eventually brought peace after more than 2 centuries of religious persecution. To understand the scope of this change in philosophy, we must first look back to the beginning in the 1st century. The persecution of Christians by the Roman Empire started under the rule of Emperor Nero. More than 200 years later, by the end of the 3rd century, rank persecution of Christians had become commonplace throughout the empire. Christians who refused to recant their faith and worship both the emperor and Roman pagan gods were tortured and killed. In the mid-3rd century, under the rule of Decius, an edict was issued that forced those claiming to be Christians to either worship Roman gods or face execution. Decius's religious campaign was intended to restore the empire to its former glory by uniting everyone under their ancestral religion. How then did Roman society's opinion of Christianity change so significantly to culminate in Constantine's adopting the religion? The answer to this lies in the vast changes that took place in Christian practices between the 1st and 4th century. Over time, the leaders of the church began accepting or at least tolerating new doctrine. In the 2nd century, Clement of Alexandria left a vast body of work that, according to Justo L. Gonzalez in Volume 1 of The Story of Christianity, Clement uses the Greek doctrine of logos to call Christians to be open to truth and philosophy. The 2nd century Bishop of Rome, later known as Pope Victor I, is well known for the Court of Decimun controversy, where he pushed for the excommunication of Christians who kept Passover as opposed to the adopted pagan fertility festival held on Sunday, later known as Easter. Victor sent out a letter to be distributed among all the Christian churches, where he warned that the Lord's resurrection from the dead should be celebrated on no other day than on Sunday. In response to this instruction, Polycrates, the Bishop of Smyrna, wrote that he kept the Passover on the 14th of the month according to the Gospel, without deviating from, but following the rule of faith. Threats do not frighten me, for greater ones than I have said God must be obeyed rather than men. Tertullian of Carthage was an early Christian author around the turn of the 3rd century. He was influenced by Stoic philosophy, and it was his writings on the concept of God being a Trinity that eventually became the hallmark of orthodoxy. The Christian faith underwent a dramatic transformation, adopting pagan practices and symbolism such as that of the ancient Egyptian symbol of life, which was used to picture the cross. The religion had changed so much that by the time Constantine ordered his soldiers to use this symbol on their shield on the eve of the Battle of Milvian Bridge in AD 312, Christianity had become fully immersed in pagan practices and traditions. Having been raised as a pagan devotee of the unconquered sun, Constantine's adoption of the transformed Christian faith effectively blended his ancestral pagan religion with what Christianity had become. Constantine seems to have thought that the unconquered sun and the Christian God were compatible, perhaps 2 views of the same supreme deity. On March 7th, AD 321, Constantine declared that, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed." Sunday worship, as opposed to Sabbath day observance, was later canonized by the Council of Laodicea in AD 363. It was Constantine who gave the stamp of approval for all the transformation that took place between the 1st and 4th centuries. Unlike Decius, who sought to unite the empire under paganism, Constantine managed to unite the empire under the guise of Christianity. He effectively set the stage for all the faux Christian practices you see emanating from Rome today. Dr. William Durant wrote in Volume 3 of The Story of Civilization, "Christianity did not destroy paganism, it adopted it. From Egypt came the ideas of a divine trinity, personal immortality of reward and punishment, the adoration of mother and child. Christianity was the last great creation of the ancient pagan world." If you have ever wondered why the Catholic Church and the Protestant offshoots observe religious events and practices that are not found in the Bible, then you only need to look to Constantine and the steady adoption of pagan idolatry to find the source. I'm Jonathan Riley for Tomorrow's World Viewpoint.